Welcome, everybody, to a special post-game edition of All In with Art Stapleton, a New York Giants podcast brought to you by NorthJersey.com and The Record. I'm your host, Art Stapleton, and I am coming to you live now, recorded in a few minutes, up on all of our favorite platforms from MetLife Stadium. I am in one of the broadcast booths after a game today that felt a lot like last year when things were not going well for Brian Dable and the New York Giants. 28-6 losers to the Minnesota Vikings. The boos here at MetLife Stadium said a lot. And in reality, to me, this comes down to the quarterback. And I just wrote a column that posted on NorthJersey.com. Make sure you go and check that out. And the headline and the sentiment behind the column is that if Daniel Jones plays like this, if this is who Daniel Jones is right now and will be for the remainder of his career, the Giants season is already on the rocks. I know some of you are probably saying, it's already over. Well, it's only one game in the standings, one really bad game. But the root of the problem here is that you cannot get to everything that you want to be offensively if your quarterback does not feel comfortable, instinctive, and confident. And watching Daniel Jones today, that's what I see. I see a quarterback that is doubting everything that he's seeing on the field. He's doubting what the Giants have in front of him. And I don't know if he knows what to do instinctually when the play breaks down. Case in point, there was a play today where a free rusher came at him. Now, granted, a lot of people want to look at that and blame the offensive line and say, well, Daniel Jones should have had more time and he could have made a play if the offensive line did its job. Well, sometimes you're going to get a free runner. And if you're an instinctive quarterback, Daniel Jones made a first great move. He got away from the runner. And instead of get away from the runner, throw the ball away, end the play, move on to the next one. You obviously had a bad play call on. That's on Brian Dable. Dable said after the game, it starts with him. That's what a head coach around here says a lot. We heard Pat Shurmur say it. We heard Ben McAdoo say it. We heard Joe Judge say it a lot. It's on me. Starts with me. But I give Dable credit for stepping out and saying, look, this is what we need to do. It's only 1 week. Yes, it's only 1 week. But Daniel Jones, when he avoided that oncoming rusher, he now still looks to make another play downfield. No, I love that aggressiveness. But the reality is you have to know when to be aggressive and when to call it quits and move on to the next play. And he didn't do that. And he got sacked, ultimately. Now, that goes back to the idea of how many hits are you going to take? How are you going to get sacked? Now, this offensive line gave up 5 sacks today on the stat sheet. Right here. Got the stat sheet right here. 5 sacks. They did not play to the level of an offensive line that gave up 5 sacks today. This offensive line was much better than what the stats say. Were they perfect? No. When the game started getting out of hand, they started leaking. They started leaking on the edges. They started giving up plays up the middle. But the reality is that they did not cause the kind of angst that the Giants have had offensively here. It was not on the offensive line. Now, I don't have the all 22, the overhead shots up here. Yes, we're in the press box, but as things are going on, can't sit there and hit rewind, pause, rewind to be able to see how many receivers were open or if guys were breaking off routes. So we don't know that. We don't know where we're at from that perspective. But I have a feeling that there are going to be a lot more downfield that Daniel Jones just did not see. Now, if you know me and you follow All In, I've tried to give Daniel Jones every benefit of the doubt because I do believe that he deserves a benefit of the doubt. As John Mara said, we've screwed this kid up every which way before Joe Shane and Brian Dable took over. But here's a reality that I think is sinking in. It's certainly setting in for me today. And I wrote this, is that it becomes apparent. And there comes a time in the NFL when a quarterback looks like the shell of himself, of what he used to be, of what he could have been, yet he did not become. It goes across the board in professional athletics. You see a guy, you see the talent, you think about and you dream about what he could be. You have hope that he will become that. But because of circumstances, some of his or her own doing, maybe it's because of the team, who's around them, ownership, decisions that are made, and for whatever reason, that player does not reach his or her potential. I think that's where we're at with Daniel Jones right now. And I wrote this in my column. The name that keeps coming back to me is David Carr with the Houston Texans. He was the first overall pick in 2002. And by the end of 2006, David Carr was out in Houston. They did not replace him with a first-round pick. They replaced him with a failed third-round pick of the Atlanta Falcons in Matt Schaub. And Houston ended up getting on a carousel of chasing, trying to find that quarterback. But what happened to David Carr in Houston? And remember, David Carr came here, was the backup to Eli, which the backup to Eli meant he held the clipboard and ran the scout team because he didn't play. He ended up winning a Super Bowl ring here. David Carr was one of my favorite players to talk to back in that 11 season because he can give you insight to Eli Manning and to that quarterback room and what it was like. And the fact that David Carr stayed in the league and did what he had to do, still, there has to be that tinge of what if? What if they had an offensive line to protect David Carr? What if they had an offensive system? What if Carr did things differently? I'm sure he has individual regrets. But that's all I keep thinking about now with Daniel Jones. What if we've seen the best of Daniel Jones? I wrote this in the spring. What if Daniel Jones's ceiling was that game in Minnesota in the playoffs? What if that's the best it's going to be? And you know Joe Shane thought about that when he was putting that contract together. They gave them the 2-year out. You know there was still a little doubt involved. Here's the reality about that contract. I went back and forth on social media with some people last night. The reality is it's two separate arguments. Number one, the contract itself. And Justin Pugh did a very good job of describing the contract and why the contract is a bargain. I know some of you hear this and say, oh, it's not a bargain when you overpay the quarterback that's not performing. Correct. But as constituted, the contract to be QB1 for the New York Giants is a bargain. The separate argument is the fact that Daniel Jones is not good enough to be that QB1 right now. And that's where the problem is. And that's where the problem lies. Because when I watch Daniel Jones today, I don't have confidence that he walks off this field and you could say there are things to build on. The only thing Daniel Jones has going for him today after this game, to me, is that he proved that he's physically healthy. Now, I don't know what's going on here. I don't know what's going on with his confidence, what he's seeing, what he's processing, what Brian Flores, the defensive coordinator, did for Minnesota today. But this was not a typical Brian Flores bring the house like Wink Martindale would have. This is, they brought some pressure, but then they dropped in certain areas. They made Jones beat them. Make quick decisions. All Daniel Jones did, patting the ball today. I picked the photo out to run with my column, and you're looking through every photo that we had in our system today, and it's of Daniel Jones standing there in the pocket. Now, I know it's a screen grab, so it's not necessarily a full play, but there were so many times where it just seemed like Daniel Jones was looking downfield, and people were going to want to blame the receivers. Well, maybe the receivers weren't open. I'm not sure. But if they're not open, throw the ball away. Throw it away. You can live to play another down. And I go back to the Houston preseason game. Before we get to some sound, I've got video of Brian Dable in his post-game presser, and then Darius Slayton caught up to him in the locker room. And I thought Slayton's answer about confidence was very interesting. But you think back to the Houston preseason game and that horrible pick six that Jones threw to Jalen Petre. The idea was that it happened, you made that read, throw the ball away. And he didn't throw the ball away. The fact that it was preseason, I came on here and I said, it's preseason. If he does it in the regular season and he's not throwing the ball away, it's a problem. He could have done anything but on that one specific play that I keep bringing up, when the free rusher came up the middle and he got away from him, throw the ball away, get it out. Even if nobody's open, get it out. Chuck it 40 yards downfield. Instead, you're looking, maybe somebody's going to get open, and you take a sack. That's how guys get hurt. That's how you make negative plays, and that's when you don't take advantage of good plays that you made. Daniel Jones showed some pretty good athleticism getting away from that defender. Make the play count. Instead, it backfired on him. And, we'll get into more of that. But I want to go to thanks to producer Paul Wood for putting the video together. Here's two videos, Brian Dable in his post-game presser, and then Darius Slayton at his locker talking about the difference between confidence and execution.
Yeah, well, look, you got to do a good job to give yourself a chance, and obviously we didn't. So no excuses. Give Minnesota credit. I didn't do a good enough job, and we worked hard to fix it.
Is there anything when you walk out of here that you say, okay, well, at least we did that. At least we could do that well?
Not at this time, no.
Coach, what was it about the 12 men? You got one of the penalties, 12 in the huddle, and then you had to play a game out there.
Yeah, you put it all on me.
Brian, what would your message be to the fans right now?
Yeah, we got to do a better job. That's what we're going to work on doing.
A couple more.
Brian, not that you're looking for excuses, but that on a Dory passing interference, that looked like a questionable call. What did you think?
Yeah, I'm not going to comment on the officiating. I thought Adoree tried to do the right thing. Again, it's bang bang play, and then they called it.
Oh, catch you by surprise.
Yeah, I definitely wasn't expecting the game to go that way, but if you give any NFL team the field position we gave them, the turnovers we gave them, it's not going to happen.
What did you think of the play call?
I thought it was fine. I think, it was fine. We could have executed a little better in some spots and made some better plays here and there, but overall it was fun.
Darius, you guys are obviously pros. You've done it. When you've done it well.
Yeah.
Does it ever become a confidence issue when things start going badly at home, as high as you were coming in? And
I wouldn't say it's a confidence issue. It's just an execution issue. You have to execute better. So, it's not that we don't. It's not a lack of belief that we can do it. It's just a matter of actually doing it. It gets to a point where you got to actually do it. Whether you believe it or don't believe it, you got to do it. So that's kind of where we're at right now, is that we have to do.
One of the things.
So that was Dabes and Darius Slayton. Slayton's kind of the voice of reason, and he's not looking to slander Daniel Jones at all. And look, neither am I. I've said this all along. I try to be as fair as possible. I'm trying to give Daniel Jones the benefit of the doubt, give him an opportunity this year with better weapons, a better front line. But my concern, and I said this, the idea was everybody expected Daniel Jones to fail. What if he succeeded? But what if he doesn't succeed? What if he's not capable of operating this offense right now? What if all the hits he took last year have destroyed any instincts or internal clock that he may have as a quarterback? What if Brian Daboll can't resurrect the quarterback that is Daniel Jones? What then? Now, Daboll was asked after the game, does he make a switch at quarterback? He said it's not even on my mind right now. They go to Washington at FedEx Field, ironically, where Daniel Jones has played the best ball outside of Minnesota. He's played the best ball of his career in that building down there in Landover, Maryland. So the Giants will go down there, but to me, it comes down to the quarterback. If Daniel Jones has nothing left to go to, if his reserve is empty, then the Giants are really in trouble this year. They're going to have to scrap and claw and try to get to a point where just winning 6 games last year was a miracle. And it was an even better coaching job last year that Brian Daboll and his staff did, considering everything that was going on, than maybe what he did the first year when he was, he was Bono, not Bozo, as John Mara would say. In terms of coach of the year in this league and getting to the playoffs and everything they were doing. So a couple other thoughts. Crushing penalty, the face mask penalty on Kayvon Thibodeau. I still have not seen video of that, but it was initially called on Brian Burns. It was actually Kayvon Thibodeau. That was a terrible, terrible turn of events. I think the Giants had 3rd and 16. They forced an underneath throw. They got him off the field. They were going to get the ball back. If you were still believing that maybe the Giants had one of those Arizona-type comebacks last year in week 2, they get off the field there. The defense came out firing in the beginning of the half. And then, of course, everything just kind of fell apart after that. Couple bright spots. Dexter Lawrence is still unblockable. I heard that Brian Burns, his ankle, he popped up with a limited practice on Friday. I had heard that he actually turned the ankle in practice. Again, it was the same ankle that he hurt in the beginning of training camp. So it was a little bit more dicey, I guess, at first about Burns's ankle, but he's fine. Should be even better next week. They need more pressure from that front because, as we saw, Sam Darnold, who was seeing ghosts today? I think the Giants were seeing ghosts of last season. Darnold was great today, and he didn't have to do much. Kevin O'Connell calling the plays was phenomenal. Their head coach in Minnesota did a great job. When he needed a play, he went to Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson beating Tay Banks on that quick slant. There was really nothing that Tay Banks could do at that point. Had pretty good coverage, but Jefferson just was great, as he always is. Little disappointed that Malik Neighbors and the Giants offense didn't do much. And that comes back to the quarterback. Not all on the quarterback, but that does come back to Daniel Jones. Jalen Hyatt not playing a lot today is interesting. I don't know. We started seeing signs coming out of the preseason that Slayton was going to be the guy with the first team, and deservedly so. Darius is a better receiver than Jalen right now, but you need to get Jalen up to speed and become a part of this offense. So we'll see if that happens. I didn't think that the running game really had a chance to get going. So that really wasn't something that I looked at. I thought some rookies played pretty well today. I thought Drew Phillips played extremely well. It was a little weird. Don't know exactly what was going on in terms of Cordell Flott playing the nickel in some packages. Drew was on the field for others, but Drew Phillips forcing the fumble early on. The Giants only get a field goal out of it. That could have been a huge momentum swing if they get in the end zone. It was good recovery by Bobby Okereke on that play. Darius Muasau ends up getting an interception, his first career interception. He walked out with the ball out of the locker room afterwards. It's a tough call here. You're a rookie. You're not happy you lost, but, you're happy with the way your first career start went. And then Tyler Nubin, I think, showed yet again why, he is somebody to really have high hopes for in this secondary. I thought he played pretty well, and that made a big deal. Another play that kind of gets lost by the end of the game is the Giants were not happy with the defensive pass interference call against Adoree Jackson. And that was, to me, questionable at the very least. And I'm not sure how they call that play. I even thought Jordan Addison initiated the contact on Adoree Jackson. Now, they were trying to say that he didn't turn his head all the way around. I call BS on that. I thought Adoree made a great play. Obviously, if you see Adoree out on the field, he was not happy after that play. So the Giants kind of, I think Adoree from some of the quotes that I read, I didn't get a chance to go over and talk to Adoree afterwards, but I think Adoree might be getting a letter from the league in terms of first an apology, and then the Giants will get the apology. Adoree will get the fine letter in the mail. I think that's kind of the way that's going to work out. But like I said, those were kind of the bright spots, but I wouldn't even call them the bright spots here because to me, in this league, you cannot win without a quarterback playing at the height of his game. And my biggest concern for the Giants going into week 2 is, can they get Daniel Jones back to playing confidently? And you have to play aggressively in this league to win, but you also have to play instinctively. And I think Jones, right now, I question his instincts. I question how shell-shocked he is. And I go back to that David Carr reference that I made in my column. That, again, go on NorthJersey.com and check that out. That was my post-game column. And that, you go back and you read and you do research on David Carr, and when he left Houston, there was this idea that he was a shell of himself, that he wasn't the same player that came in 2002 and was the franchise. And I know we've all made a lot this summer, had fun with Daniel Jones's beard and the swagger and the edge, and that was all in practice, and it was good to see. But today here at MetLife, I didn't see the Daniel Jones that I remember Evan Ingram just going crazy about in practice, that he just was fearless and throwing the ball downfield and making plays and knowing when to pull back and knowing when to push the envelope, like he did in his first game down in Tampa Bay. It seems so long ago for Daniel Jones right now. And like I said, the hardest thing about this season for the Giants, and I'll end with this, was the idea that you had to deal with the premise that in this offseason, the Giants were going to look for their next quarterback. We know what they did this past draft season. We know they would have drafted Drake May. We know they liked Jaden Daniels. But because of what happened down the stretch last year, they were too far out of the picture to be able to draft them. They knew Washington wasn't moving. They knew Washington wasn't likely trading with the Giants in that spot. They tried, at least initially, with New England, but they knew New England wasn't moving. Even though we saw it on Hard Knocks, they weren't moving. The hardest part for the Giants this year was going to be move forward with Daniel Jones is still the quarterback. We can win with Daniel Jones, but we're going to be looking for his replacement again next offseason. And right now, the biggest problem with that is that Daniel Jones didn't show anyone that the Giants could win with Daniel Jones. that's got to change. If that can't change, if he's incapable of playing winning football and getting this team into the end zone and making plays that allow the pieces around you that they've added here, not just on offense, on defense. This pass rush was getting home early. They were. But then when you fall behind and you're down 14-3, it's over. There's no more pass rush. Just ask Brian Burns. His offense in Carolina last year did not play with one lead, not one snap in the fourth quarter with a lead in Carolina last year. This pass rush would have gotten home more today had the circumstances presented themselves. If the Giants don't settle for a field goal and they get in the end zone after the Drew Phillips fumble forced, maybe things are different. And I know sometimes it feels like we're putting too much on the quarterback. Daniel Jones is getting paid $40 million a year. Salary cap hit is more than that. He can take it. He's a professional athlete. He's a quarterback. This is the role you want to be in. And I'll leave you with this. He says all the right things, Daniel. Daniel does everything he can. He's a great guy. People have a lot of respect for him in that building. I know this. But there's a reason why Eli Manning, every Monday after a loss, he spoke to the media. But every Monday after a win, Eli Manning didn't talk. Because he knew if they lost, it was on his shoulders. If they won, he wanted everybody else to get the credit. Now, I'm not saying Daniel Jones doesn't want his teammates to get the credit. My point is that is the job of the quarterback here. The quarterback, before Daniel Jones, laid it out perfectly. You do your job, you lose, you take it on your shoulders because they're coming for you. Everybody remembers Eli with the dunce cap in the corner on the back page of the New York Post. You win, they come for everybody else. And then 5 years after you retire, they debate whether or not you belong in Canton because you have 2 Super Bowl rings. I know the Giants hope that Daniel Jones could one day prove that he belongs in the same class as Eli Manning and Phil Simms, who are both here today. I think it's false hope at this point. I think they're holding on to something that might not exist anymore. I just don't know how much Daniel Jones has left in the tank to be able to take his game to where it needs to be to lead these Giants not just to the playoffs or to the Super Bowl, lead them to some wins. He's got to play better and has to find a way to play better. And Brian Daboll has to try to unlock whatever wasn't there today and whatever was missing. And if it's on everybody else, and I watched the All-22 video, and we see that this guy ran the wrong route, and this guy wasn't open, and that guy wasn't open, then I'll come back on here the next show, and I will say, I was wrong. I was a little too harsh on Daniel Jones. But leaving this stadium here tonight, as I started the show, as I wrote in my column, if this is the Daniel Jones that is going to play quarterback for the Giants this season is already on the rocks, and we're only 1 game in because they can't win with this Daniel Jones consistently this year. That's just – and I don't know if they could win with Drew Lock, and I certainly don't know if they can win any more games with Tommy DeVito. But I do know that what Daniel Jones showed today, they can't win with. We're still all in, though. We're not all out yet. So for Paul Wood, my producer, for everybody else back at NorthJersey.com, appreciate you watching. Enjoy this post-game video. We won't go as long in the future, but I think we needed to go this long for our post-game show today, just to kind of, I know a lot of you have said you come to me because I talk you off the ledge. Well, I don't know if I could talk you off the ledge, but there's always next week. And like I said, if there's ever a place for Daniel Jones to bounce back, it'd be in Washington, because that's the one team that he's owned. The Washington Commanders have had 3 owners in the last decade or so. Daniel Snyder, the team they have now, and Daniel Jones. So we'll see. I'm Art Stapleton. Thanks for being all in. We'll catch you this week. keep on following our coverage at NorthJersey.com. Have a good night.